if we follow the hose pipe down here, we come to something which I started a long time ago now. It's been here for about 2.5 years. That is a huge circle which I built and glued and screwed together, and that was, along with a load of other bits of wood, going to form the circle of a dome. And I did the maths and I worked out everything, and I even cut the petals which were to make up the dome. These were the petals which were going to make up part of the dome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think there were, which I cut out. And I never got around to making any more than just this at the moment. And I have a bunch of wood here, which was actually the kids' playhouse. When they outgrew that, it came down, and I was going to use some of that wood for various projects, including the observatory dome. So I was going to try and build an observatory dome. So this huge hoop was to form the base of the dome, and then the petals would go round and form a full dome with an opening shutter. And whilst this is a great idea and would have been a brilliant project, I don't have the time to do this. I really don't. It's not the building of the actual dome. That bit I don't really have any problem with. It's the coding and the programming. I don't have the knowledge to do that at the moment, and I'd have to learn all of that and then do all of the coding to enable it to work and to integrate it into some kind of automation system. I just don't have the knowledge and time to be able to devote to this sort of project. And if I was to do this again, I think a roll-off roof observatory project would be better, and I think I'd be able to automate that a bit easier than a full dome with dome geometry and everything else that goes with that. At the moment, this one I think I'm going to have to take apart and use the wood for something else maybe. So this got me thinking, what other projects have I started which were a really good idea at the time, but because my direction has changed, I've not necessarily been able to utilize. This was one of those projects. This is a pretty cool project. This is a power supply which I built, and the idea of this was to enable me to power everything, including my mount, from a 12-volt battery. So this project here was to allow me to have 12-volt supply, which was then stepped up using that thing there, which is a DC to DC converter. It steps up to 19 volts, but it's adjustable, so it could be any voltage. I then had a link through with 12 volts, so 12 volts in, and then I just paralleled it across. So it was 12 volts out as well. But I also then took 12 volts into some USB sockets here, so I could power things via USB as well. So this was a power supply to enable me to image outdoors on a battery. So a 12-volt car battery or a leisure battery, for example. And whilst it was a great idea building this, and it works perfectly, it's absolutely brilliant, I've never used it. It didn't cost much. The components very cheap, and the box was very cheap. It cost about 10 quid to make, and my time. But I'd quite like to use this, and I notice now that I could modify this to make it a bit more useful. This is my mount here, and I've got the mount being powered there. I think that one is for the camera. This one must be for the focuser. That one's for my USB hub. That one I think is for a computer, and then that one, when it's plugged in, would be the dew heater. So potentially I could get rid of all of these and just have one really powerful 10 amp 12 volt power supply feeding to one box. My thoughts with this would be that if I just put a 12 volt supply on there and then use this as a kind of buffer here, which would then distribute to a bunch of more 12 volt outputs. I could probably take a 10 amp 12 volt supply and then supply most of the 12 volt things on my mount, on my cameras and various other things via this. And that's quite interesting, and it might be worth having a go, because on my tripod I have a lot of power bricks. So this could become a single power brick and a power distribution unit. I also have up here my all-sky cameras, which I built. Slightly dusty at the moment, they just need a bit of a clean. But I want to revisit this at the moment, completely and utterly empty, and I really need to get these outside and doing some imaging with them. It's perfect for doing it at the moment. It's completely cloudy, so I can't do deep sky imaging, but I absolutely can use an all-sky camera and try and get a camera taking images all night long. So that's another project, two of those up there, which I could really do with progressing a bit more. Astronomy-wise, the main project that I am going to finish is the dual scope project, and there's been some interesting developments with that as well. If you recall, with the dual scope project, one of the key challenges is getting both telescopes to look at exactly the same part of the sky. Now, I am not in an observatory situation. I have to bring everything in, either because it's raining or because the night has finished, or because I'm not going to be there to look after it. So it was important that I could rig and de-rig every day and get the scopes aligned so that they looked basically the same thing. And I did some online research and I found this thing here. This is the Losmandy plate, which holds my two scopes. This is one side and this is the other side. And this beautifully engineered piece of aluminium has the ability to lift the scope up and down using that knob, and from left to right. So basically it's an alt-azimuth adjustment, and you can see there, this great big knob here allows me to change the entire plate from left to right, and it can hold a massive amount of weight. I mean, huge amount of weight. This will allow me to clamp one scope in there and another scope in there on a Losmandy plate, and I will then be able to align this saddle so that both scopes look at the same thing through twiddling some big aluminium knobs. And that was made by JTD Astro, and it cost an absolute fortune. So yes, and yes, I could have spent a very long time aligning these and then clamping the scope, or putting shims in and then clamping the scope, but I would never have been able to get it consistent. This will hopefully allow me to align the scope perfectly and adjust it and lock it off, and then have a repeatable alignment every time I de-rig and re-rig the scope. I may just have to do a little tweak like you would with your polar alignment. I'll have to do some basic scope alignment, but this saddle is the one that I have chosen. There is another very similar saddle from ADM, which is almost the same design and is able to take a large load as well. I chose this one because it was easy to get in the UK, and also it's made by a British company and I wanted to support a British company. So therefore I went for this one. So that's kind of all of my projects. That's the channel update for now. At the moment it's completely clouded over, so I've not been able to image, and we've also been away for a few days. So I promise I will get some more imaging done soon. In the meantime, here are two images which I took. They're both HOO, so hydrogen, oxygen going into red, green and blue, one of which is the elephant's trunk and the other is the Seda region, which I took with the 60 EDF scope and a mono setup. This has been a really good experience because the 7 nanometer SV Boni oxygen filter has huge halos around the stars. The HOO combination has oxygen twice for the blue and green elements, so the halos are really prominent, and I'm not too keen on that, so I'll have to look carefully at the filters to see whether or not I can improve anything at all. Thank you very much for watching. I just wanted to come and talk to you all and say hello. So hello, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye everyone. I thought this might be quite fun. I'm going to drop this camera into the pond and see what's in there. I've never done this before. I've got a little waterproof thingy. I'll put you inside the waterproof thingy. There's the pond. In there. I'm going to drop you in. Here we go. Don't know if you can still hear me. And in you go.